Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. It is officially time for another ink exploration, and if you missed it, I did a poll both on my Instagram and then also on my YouTube community. So the poll was between doing more fall type colors, yellows, oranges, things like that, or going straight into purples, which has been very requested. And it was a tie. It was literally 50-50 on my Instagram. So I did the same poll on my community and it was practically a tie again. So yellows and orange won out by 51%. So the 1% over half who asked for this, I hope this meets your expectations. Today we're going to be doing 12 inks. They are all yellow in my opinion. Some of them may be a little bit more light brown perhaps, but I find that using a yellow ink is really a challenge. So hopefully this is a broad enough spectrum of yellows to choose from that you could probably find something that you were looking for. I do want to say that I have quite a few DeAtramentis yellows because I wanted to see how those are, but we'll get to that in a second. As for supplies today, this is a A5 𝗏𝗏 notebook with the original Tomoe River paper. I have a 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 brass dip pen as my writing utensil, a plastic dropper today, the condiment cup, which was inspired by Leanne Likes, and then also a jar of water and my old t-shirt that I've been using as a towel. Getting started with our first ink over here, this is Diamine 3 Kings. It is a standard ink. I consider this ink to be actually pretty legible for a yellow ink. It may lean more towards a ochre or like a golden yellow color, but I do want to say that since this is a standard ink, it does have some really nice just writing capability. It's got some good shading to it. It's a beautiful color, and I think out of the yellows, I tend to move towards this shade when I do any writing with yellow just because it is more legible for me, but I wouldn't say it's a true yellow. It's more of a goldish ochre color. The next ink I have here is our first shimmer ink, and this one is Robert Oster Heart of Gold. When I think of yellow ink, I also think of gold, and to me this ink is literally like writing with gold. It is so stunning. I hope you get to see its quality when this dries down. I hope the camera picks it up. It is so beautiful. The base of this ink is definitely kind of like a muddy yellow color, maybe almost like a yellow black, if that's even possible. And the shimmer, oh my god, just oh my god. Yeah, this one is my favorite out of all of the gold inks I have ever tried. I actually have a full bottle of this ink, but I'm waiting to finish off my sample, which I have about 1 ml left, I think. And then I'm going to break open that bottle because it is so much fun to write with. I wouldn't necessarily use this as like a journaling ink because it would probably be a little bit much to have a full page of just gold writing. But I will say this is really fun to do things like big headers or add small details to the page if you like to do little doodles. Like I've done little golden hearts all over my page before, even stars. It's just a really fun ink to have. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a must-have, but if you like shimmery things, I definitely would highly recommend this ink. It is so much fun. The next ink we have here for yellows is Ferris Buttered Popcorn, and I would have to say this one it's yellow. It is such a pretty yellow color. I find this ink to be yellow. It is this goldish kind of, I don't know, almost orange yellow, but it's not quite orange yellow. It's just a really nice warm yellow color. I would definitely say it probably looks like melted butter, so they did really good job with naming this one. I feel like Ferris does that really well in general. I do, however, think this one is a little bit too light for me. Like I said, I tend to move more towards those ochre yellows, and this yellow is very bright, very beautiful, but I don't think it's something I could write long pages with just because it's harder for me to see it. And I did want to include a lot of yellow inks that are not very legible for me, but they may be legible for you. So I do think this one is one of the ones I don't particularly care for just because it's still a little too light, but it is a darker, warm yellow, and I think it would be very beautiful if you like writing with this kind of color. Next we have Jacques Herbin Ambre de Birmaine. Ambre de Birmaine. Again, I've been working on my French, and I want to thank you guys so much for all of your comments on how to pronounce things. I believe this one is like an amber, meant to be like an amber stone. I didn't look up the translation, that's just my guess, so if I'm wrong, let us know in the comments, because I know I love reading them, and I'm sure other people do too. This color is very much like an amber stone. If you collect crystals or like geology or anything like that, this definitely is a very spot-on color for the color of amber. And I consider this a yellow, some may consider it more of a brown, but it is again that kind of like soft ochre yellow color that I truly like to write with. So again, this one I consider to be a very legible yellow color, and it is more yellow to me than brown. Others may consider it more brown. It's just, I don't know, to each his own. I do want to say that Herbin inks are typically a little bit drier, which I know I've said in previous videos, so if having something that's a little bit too dry for you is a problem, maybe either steer away from this brand or add some white lightning to it, or something that will make the ink a little bit more flowy to your liking. I will also say that this ink has some beautiful shading to it when it dries down, and I hope that the camera can showcase that for you guys. The next ink we have here is another by Ferris Press, and this is Sparkling Champagne. Like I said, I like to include the golds with the yellows just because I feel like it is still a yellow color. And Sparkling Champagne is quite stunning in terms of coloring and shimmer as well. This ink is very much a light golden ochre color. It has this beautiful, almost light gold shimmer to it, and it is so stunning in writing. Honestly, I would take this up without the shimmer and still write with it. I still find it very legible, even though it is still fairly light. And although it kind of smeared into my titling of the page, I hope we'll still get to see the actual true color of it. Just, we might ignore that bottom piece where it blended with my marker ink. But I do like this ink. I wouldn't buy a bottle per se just because I like the Heart of Gold so much more, but it is a beautiful golden shimmery ink if that is something you were looking for. The next ink we have here is 3 Oysters Delicious Mustard, and I'd have to say this is probably one of my favorite yellow inks. 3 Oysters Delicious Mustard is a gorgeous shading ink. I'm just going to say that right now. I actually used this in my August currently inked video and my progress reports, and I didn't write with it as much as I probably should have just because I had so many other colors that I prefer to write with than yellow. But out of all of the yellows, this is one of my favorites. It is ochre again. It's more of like a golden yellow, and it just has that beautiful shading that I talked about. I will say 3 Oysters is, I don't know, I feel like their inks are either really dry or really wet depending on which collection you go with. The I Color You collection is really wet, and this collection, the food collection, seems to be a little bit more dry to me. So that's just my opinion. It may just be what I've experienced. But overall, the color of this ink is such a pretty yellow. It is stunning, it is light, but it's still readable, and again, I think this is definitely one of the top inks in the yellow family for me. The next ink I have here is probably one of the coolest inks in my yellow collection, and I'm actually almost out of it, and this is Platinum Citrus Black. This ink is one of the coolest inks I have ever written with, in my opinion. It starts off as this bright yellow color, and you'll even see as I write, it turns darker as it dries down, and it like color shifts. It is so cool. I would say this is again one of those more legible yellow colors, and I think this is honestly one of my favorite yellows to write with. I'm currently writing with this in my October lineup with my pens. I actually have this in a Platinum Preppy right now, and I find that it is just so much fun to watch the color change on the page that it just makes me want to write with it more. So if you're looking for a really good yellow ink that's a little bit more interesting, has a little bit more depth, I definitely recommend this one. And I'd probably say this is my favorite yellow ink of all time so far, just because it's so much fun to watch the color change as you write with it. The next ink we have here is DeAtramentis Document Yellow, and just look at how yellow this ink is. If you want yellow, and I mean yellow, this is your ink. I personally can't read this one when I write with it. It is much too bright. I think it is, yellow to the actual color. Like, this is so yellow, it is ridiculous. The only problem I have with it, like I said, is it's too light. In terms of quality of ink, it is so juicy, it writes very well, it's very flowy, it's a good consistency, and it's a document ink, so it's going to be a bit more permanent in your journal pages or even in drawings. I would use this in drawings, honestly. I'd probably either draw some flowers with this or any kind of yellow fruit like bananas, pineapples, anything like that. I personally don't think I could ever write with this color. It is just too light for my eyes, but it's a beautiful color. It's yellow. It is so yellow. Yeah, again, not really legible for me, but I wanted to include it in case it would be legible for somebody else. And I still think it's a beautiful ink, and I still think it would be really fun to draw with. I just don't think it would be really fun to journal with. Continuing with our DeAtramentis, we have DeAtramentis Amber Yellow, and this has the copper shimmer in it. Again, this ink is super bright and super beautiful. It is a gorgeous yellow color that is very yellow again. I can't see myself writing with this one because it's still a bit too light, but it is really, really quite pretty with the coppery shimmer and the bright yellow base. So when it dries down, I hope, again, the camera can showcase that for you guys. I will say, again, DeAtramentis, whatever they do to their inks, they are always juicy, they always flow well, so consistency-wise, I love this ink. But, again, color, it's yellow, it is bright yellow. I can't personally read it, but it is still a beautiful ink, and I will be likely drawing with what's left of my sample, just because it's really fun to add a little bit of a shimmer to any kind of floral drawings that you do or anything like that. So, great drawing ink in my opinion. Not so legible in terms of writing, but if you can read it, all power to you. And again, I love DeAtramentis because of the flow of their inks. I have one more DeAtramentis ink that I'm going to include in the yellows, and that is Whiskey Brown Copper. So I know it's more brown, at least in terms of title, but I feel like with the shimmer that it has and also more of the ochre color, this is appropriate for this color group, not necessarily for the browns. I personally love this color. This is, again, one of those yellows that's a little bit more ochre, maybe because it's called brown in the title, but it definitely reads more yellow to me, and I think with the rest of the inks I have on this page, y'all would agree with me. But I will say this again is a little bit of a lighter color. It is still ochre, and I would journal with this, honestly. It is stunning, and the shimmer with it, with the copper, makes it so beautiful, and it does have shading too. It's just a beautiful ink. But again, it is a bit lighter. I still prefer like the 3 Oysters Delicious Mustard or the Platinum Citrus Black or even Diamine 3 Kings to this one, but I still think it is beautiful, and I would probably buy another sample of it, but I don't know if I'd buy a full bottle just because it's not a color I would typically write with on the regular. The second to last ink we have here is, of course, Pilot Iroshizuku Hotaru or 𝗦𝘃𝗃𝗏. And this is, I believe, Light of the Fireflies is the translation. I talked about it in my full swatch of all of the Iroshizuku collection. I named all of them off, and I really enjoy this ink, but it's honestly, I think it's too light for me. This ink is highlighter yellow. It is highlighter green yellow. It is very bright. I do love that this ink has shading like most of the Iroshizuku line, and it is kind of legible in broader nibbed pens in my opinion, but it is not an ink I am drawn to by any means, unfortunately. And I love the Pilot Iroshizuku line. It's probably one of my favorite ink lines out there. It's just this one it's not for me. It's too bright, it's too light, and that's all I can really say about it. I do think the name 𝗦𝘃𝗏 meaning, or 𝗦𝘃𝗏𝗏 meaning fireflies, is pretty accurate because this does look like a firefly butt in my opinion when it's all lit up in the middle of the night. But yeah, it's a really pretty color. I do classify it as yellow and not green just because it is a little bit more yellow leaning than green, but some may consider this a very bright light green. But I want to include it in the yellows, so that's what I'm doing. And the last ink we have is Ferris Press Freshly Squeezed Sunshine. And I'm just going to tell you now, I cannot read this ink for the life of me. This one, again, is, yeah, I can't read it. like I said, it's not legible to me at all. It is honestly even brighter to me than the DeAtramentis Document Yellow. It is so bright. I will say it does have a little bit of shading that makes it a little bit darker than the DeAtramentis Document Yellow, but this is more bright yellow. Again, probably one I would more color with than write with, but I still think it is a beautiful color and it would be really nice in probably painting because it's a little bit warmer than the DeAtramentis Document Yellow. So in terms of drawing something like a bright sun, like freshly squeezed sunshine, this one would be the color I would go for versus the DeAtramentis Document Yellow. But again, it's really bright. I don't think it's very legible in terms of writing, but it is very beautiful in terms of drawing and just being an overall beautiful yellow color. But yeah, I think it's a good one to end off on because it rounds out all of the inks on the page. Alrighty, so I'm going to let these finish drying down. Some of them have already dried and you can kind of see a little bit, but I'll be back in a minute and we'll do some close-ups and I'll talk a little bit more about like shading, sheen, things like that. So see you guys in a minute. Alrighty, I am back. Looks like the inks have pretty much dried down a little bit. There's still a little bit of wetness on the side, but it's nothing too severe. So we're just going to go ahead and zoom you guys in and do some close-ups. Starting with our first swatch here, we had Diamine 3 Kings, which is from the 2022 Green Advent Calendar. Look at that gorgeous shade of that dark kind of medium brown and then this ochre color. It is so beautiful. I really do like this ink and enjoy it quite a lot, and I'm glad I have a very small bottle of it. There's no sheen or shimmer for this one. It is just a standard flat ink, and I think that is one of the beautiful things about it. Next we have Robert Oster Heart of Gold. Look at that. It is, I'm serious guys, writing with this is literally like writing with gold, and you can probably tell a little bit in the writing sample. It's just shiny and pretty, and I love looking at it. Again, not an ink I would typically pick for long journal pages. I think it would work best in terms of just like accents or even small drawings. But it's still really pretty, and if you like writing with gold ink or doodling with gold ink, highly recommend this one. Then we had Ferris Press Buttered Popcorn. Again, this one's probably okay in terms of legibility for yellow. It's still really light for me, but it does have this kind of like orange shade to it, and I think that's what makes it a little bit more legible. So as you can see a little bit more in the writing sample up here versus the writing sample down here, it does shade a little bit differently depending on the angle you hold your pen. I don't think this would do very well in a fine nibbed pen. I think it would be best in a medium or even a broad in terms of legibility, but it's still really pretty, like more bright yellow ink than some of the others. Then we had Jacques Herbin Ambre. I think it's Birmaine or Birmaine. Again, pronunciation I'm working on. But this one again is that gorgeous kind of like ambery ochre color. It has that beautiful shading that's a little bit more orange than brown in my opinion. And yeah, it's a good solid color. I would write with this one quite a lot, honestly, in terms of yellow. It isn't yellow like some of the others on these pages, but I still really enjoy this ink because of its shading, and I think it's a really nice color. Then we had Ferris Pressed Sparkling Champagne. It didn't really affect the color down here at all. It is this kind of like literal champagne color. It is more golden yellow, I guess. It does have that really pretty kind of golden yellow sheen. Let me see if I can get it. Or golden yellow shimmer. And it is quite stunning. Again, I think this one is very well named in terms of champagne. I think it expresses that color very well. Ferris Press is typically a little bit drier, but this is a very beautiful ink nonetheless. Then we had three Oysters Delicious Mustard, still one of my favorite yellow inks. This one does have a very minor black sheen. I'll see if I can get it to flash. Maybe... You might be able to tell, but it is a very dark yellow color. It does have some beautiful shading to it, almost to a black shading. Yeah, this is one of my favorite yellows just because it's a little bit darker, much more legible for me, and it is just a fun name. Like, it's like mustard. I don't know. It's kind of a cool ink. Then we had my favorite yellow ink, honestly, which I don't even know if it can be really considered yellow, but it is Platinum Citrus Black. As you saw when I was writing with it, it started off as like almost this color, and now it is this color. It is such a cool shading ink. The color shift is honestly really fun to watch, and I really do enjoy writing with this one. I think in terms of actual yellow though, I don't know if the final writing sample could even be considered yellow, but it is definitely a yellow black, so this one might be a little bit more black than yellow. However, I find that if you write with a more medium nib to even a probably Western fine, where it's a little bit broader, it still picks up on the shading and it still looks very yellow on the page versus more of this black, which would be a more broad pen. But I really do love this ink. Then we had DeAtramentis Document Yellow. This is still a little bit wet in the middle here. It doesn't have any sheen, but it is bright yellow. Yeah, there's not much else to say other than this is yellow. It is yellow, and it's a document ink, so it's going to be a bit more permanent. I would definitely use this for drawing, but I can't write with this one. It's too illegible for me. Then we had DeAtramentis Ambre Yellow with the copper shimmer. It is so pretty. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I love the shimmer in this one. I think with the shimmer, it is much more legible than without it. Again, it's that bright yellow base, and then that coppery shimmer on top makes it a little bit more yellow-orange in my opinion. Beautiful ink. I don't think I could really write with this one because it's still a little bit too light, but it is still quite stunning. Then we had DeAtramentis Whiskey Brown Copper. Again, I know it's called brown in the title, but I really feel this one is much more of a ochre yellow color, and the shimmer on it just, chef's kiss. I would love to write with this one constantly, honestly. The more muted, like ochre yellow base with the copper shimmer it's just really pretty, and I think this would be a really good choice if you needed a lighter ink, but is still pretty legible. Then we had Pilot Iroshizuku Hotaru Bai, and yeah, it is highlighter yellow green maybe. It does have that kind of light green shading to it. It doesn't have a sheen as far as I can tell. It is still a little bit wet there in the middle, but the shading on it is quite lovely, and not my favorite ink, not my favorite color, but it is a bit more legible than some of the others on this page. So if it's something that you like to go for it. And then we ended off with Ferris Press Freshly Squeezed Sunshine. This one does have a little bit of an orange sheen on the edges. I don't know if you'll be able to see it pick up, but the shading is not that impressive compared to some of the other shaders. It does have a very light orange shade to it, almost like a yellow-orange shade in the middle there. Again, this one is much too light for me to write with. I personally would just draw with this one. I don't think it's legible enough for me to read it, honestly, even in my swatch. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's just a bright yellow color. Beautiful, good for coloring, but I wouldn't write with this one. All right, so that is all that I have in terms of yellow ink exploration. I'm sure there are dozens more yellow inks out there that could be added to this that would be a little bit more legible than maybe this one or this one, but these are the ones that I do have in my collection. If you have any yellow inks that I didn't do today, please leave them down in the comments because I'm always on the hunt for a good yellow, and I've had a couple of recommendations that I haven't jumped on yet, but I want to see what else you guys have to offer. But this is what I have, and I'm excited for the rest of our ink explorations for this month because it's going to be a continuation of our autumny colors, and I'm really excited for it. If you're interested in more of the ink explorations I have done, I will leave a playlist down in the description, and I will put one up in the cards as well if I can. And yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I look forward to any other recommendations you have, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.